But again, the job was started an hour before sunup, standing alert on some ramp, Fürstenfeldbruck, Germany in this case. And long hours didn't matter because it meant that we would fly once or twice or maybe 3 times that day. History again. This is over the French Alps. The thought occurred to me, you mean to tell me Hannibal came across these mountains with elephants? We had to practice our gunnery skills down in North Africa, what is now Gaddafi land, Huilis, a Tripoli Air Force base at Huilis, Libya. And that's where these photographs were taken. Some of the local color. Taxi cab. Take a good look. Those are not all people. There are 2 sheep and a goat. The Marine Corps, their hymn, you know, they talk about from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. That fort is where they chased the Barbary pirates out of. Again, there's no history lesson I could ever have taken that would propel me to see things like this. I never knew the Romans had cities in North Africa. This is Leptis Magnum, just to the west of Tripoli. Once in a while, the dragon wins. We went down to fire gunnery. You take an F-86 and you tow a nylon target behind it. And then 4 or 5 airplanes go in and fire machine guns at the target. You have a long cable behind you. Well, one of my friends got too engrossed in the target. He hit the tow bar. And that tow bar cut through that wing. This is the main spar on the wing. He came that close of cutting the wing off. Now, there's a sequel to this story. I showed these slides up in Grand Forks, North Dakota, and a good friend of mine was in the audience, a guy who was stationed over in Germany with me. And when I showed these things, his fate was white as a sheet. He was the guy flying this airplane, Bob Aycock. He never knew the photographs existed. I'm not really a wine connoisseur, but perhaps some of you are. Mosel wines are some of the prized wines out of Germany. To me, they're too dry. They're too sour. But Traben-Trabach, this little city here, produces some of the most expensive Mosel wines. And I've spent several days at that restaurant that sits on the top of the bridge here, sampling their wines that are not quite as dry. Now, I hope there's a carpenter someplace in the audience. I know this guy had a broken plumb bob. I can imagine if you dropped an egg in the living room, it rolled through to the kitchen or vice versa. The earth must have been tilted the day they built that house. But that's some of that good German building, I guess. But I thought that was, I have two of them. One's enough. But that is a classic to me. This is somewhere in 1954, 55. And without a doubt, this is not the enlightened part of Germany. I mean, this guy's towing a wagon with 2 cows. But I guess you do what you have to do. Hahn Air Force Base was built between Koblenz and Trier. All during World War II, the Germans are too smart to build a base up there, but we did. It had the worst weather of any airport in continental United States, overseas, anyplace else. It could snow in August. When I left that place, I had 200 hours of fighter weather. I mean, our whole doggone flight could last no more than 2.5 hours. If it's more than 2.5 hours, you made a nylon letdown because you had no fuel. But 200 hours of fighter weather. So it gives you an indication that maybe they made a mistake when they put that base up there. This was taken in Switzerland. By 1956, other countries were beginning to produce airplanes that were at least transonic. This is a British Hawker Hunter. And they had an air show at Geneva, so I went down for it. Beautiful airplane. The difficulty was, though, that they did not have what we had on the 86. They did not have a flying tail. In other words, they had an elevator. The stabilizer didn't move. So at high Mach numbers, they had trouble. Now, the Swedish were just beginning to build jet airplanes. This was their first effort. It looked like a beer keg. But you can't say that about their latest aircraft. They've had a very steep learning curve. Now, I've warned you that you're going to see me many more times. These were taken on the French Riviera. We had a baseball team that won a few games, and they gave them a free trip to the Riviera. Well, I had to find some way. I was not a baseball player. I had to find some way to get to the Riviera, so I signed on as a trainer. I have to tell you something about Nice, though. It does not have a sand beach. It's got a pebble beach. And there's no laying in the sand. I mean, those pebbles will just, they're about the size of at least a silver dollar. And it's not a fun beach at all. But again, I have to prove that I was there. These were not a postcard. Again, there's nothing more dangerous than a second lieutenant. In 1956, we changed from the F-86Fs of the Korean era to a later version, the F-86H. And this was a F-86, but totally different airplane. It had a much bigger engine. Instead of having 650 caliber machine guns, it had 420s. Unfortunately, our mission changed also. We're no longer strictly fighter and fighter bomber. We picked up a special weapons mission. In other words, we were expected to carry tactical nuclear weapons. So instead of carrying only 2 tanks, we had 3 tanks and a rack. With all that power, the thing flew like a truck. And we were not happy fighter jocks. Instead of the sliding canopy that the A through the F had, now we've got a clamshell canopy. Much improved, much bigger cockpit. I didn't have to duck my head to get a canopy closed. And it was a good flying airplane. This was the last of the transonic airplanes. This was replaced by the F-100. We went into the Century Series airplanes after this. Again, I have to prove that I was there. I was on the way out of the country, deported Paris, back to the States, and I was not assigned a flying job after this. I was sent back to teach ROTC, and again, I was not a happy camper at all. But out of adversity, sometimes good things happen. I told the people at the area university that I really didn't like big crowds, that I preferred small bunches, like 3 other guys in a flight. And I would not make a good instructor. And he said, well, I tell you what you do. So that you can hear yourself, go stand in a corner and talk, because you're going to be an ROTC instructor, period. After 3 years, I have to admit I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought I was able to sway some young people towards the Air Force, and especially towards aviation. And it did my heart good when I ran into several full-bowl colonels that had been my students. Also, one of the guys in my flight over in Germany turned out to be a major general, so I must have done something right along the way. I came back to fly things like this, T-39, front office, and then the thing that really almost put a spear through my heart, they sent me to Minuteman II in Grand Forks, North Dakota. And I thought it was all over. But again, fate stepped in, and I wish it had changed, but the Vietnam got hot, war got hot, and I departed North Dakota, thank God. And that's where we'll pick up phase 2. In 1967, I finally got out of SAC, got out of missiles, and went through conversion training from fixed wings to wings that rotate, rotor wings as we call it, to helicopters. Now, I have to tell you, first of all, I am a fighter pilot, and we start from there. And to go fly helicopters is a step backwards. But to get out of missiles, I would fly anything. In fact, I told them, anything with rudder pedals on it, I'll fly it. Just get me out of here. So they thought they were doing me dirt. They sent me to helicopters. And I laughed all the way out the gate. The first place you go en route to Vietnam was to the Clark Air Force Base, to the PACAF Jungle Survival School. And there's a chance you may have to walk out of the jungle. And this is what it was all about. This is what I was flying. This is a Sikorsky HH-3 Jolly Green helicopter. Fully loaded, it weighed 11 tons. This was no little police helicopter. The mountain you see there in the background is Mount Pinatubo. That's the one who blew its top and buried Clark Air Force Base in about 6 feet of ash right now. So Clark is an ash pit. It's gone. Yours truly was not a postcard, Da Nang Air Force Base, South Vietnam. That pipe is a refueling probe. Unlike flying the North Atlantic, where we had to stop every 800 miles or every 2.5 hours to get fuel, I can stay up there as long as they send the filling station. This is Da Nang Harbor. That's a hospital ship. There's a helicopter pad on the aft deck. That's an H-3 helicopter right there, and we'd go out in the harbor and shoot landings on it, simulating bringing in wounded people to the hospital ship. Another view of the harbor. Beautiful place, but there was a war going on. This is just to the west of Da Nang, and this is where the Marines, this was in I Corps, kept Charlie off our backs, sometimes. Looking back towards the base, they would still slip in there. How, God only knows. The first night I was there, I like to say they rocked us to sleep. We had a rocket attack. And before going to sleep, I said, what are those tanks out there? Oh, they're water tanks. Turned out with JP-4, and right outside the building. And they put about 6 rockets in there that night. Thank God they didn't hit a tank. But these are the things that you went through in South Vietnam. Now you're looking at the business end. Our filling station was a KC-130, 130 outfit with the program-drove fuel system. And for a fighter jock, this is easy. I just pull up on the perch and sit there, and then come off the perch and come down and hit the basket. And that's a refueling position. Now I want to show you something. You see those 2 broad lines there? One there and one there. When you come in and hit the basket, you push it in until the second broad line is into the tank. It tells you what your refueling position is. So any place between here and there, you're within the refueling range and fuel can flow. So you come down, hit the basket, and start pushing it in. This guy is too close. He's pushed the second line in, and look at that rotor blade in relation to the horizontal stabilizer. Those guys at 130 are in a panic. They've got a guy standing in a door back here with a red light, and I guarantee that light's going on, and they're screaming, break away right now, because that rotor blade would be like a giant razor. It would cut that horizontal stabilizer right off, and you'd have 2 airplanes in the deck. But again, it's nothing more than flying formation, and for guys who flew fighters, it was easy. In our mission over there, these were our guardian angels, the A1s. We didn't go any place without these guys. Helicopter is the easiest thing in the world to hit, especially when it's in a hover. Now, Vietnam was the first mass effort in which we had to extract shot down pilots out of enemy territory. Initially, in 65 and early 66, they didn't have any H-3s. They had H-43s, a little inefficient, local-based rescue helicopter. So we lost a lot of people by not being able to recover them. And that's the reason the Air Force put these into production and started supplying the rescue forces with the H-3 helicopter. But again, we didn't stand a ghost of a chance without these guys protecting us. Once in a while, the Dragon wins. I had a guy practicing landing on a sandbar in Da Nang Harbor, and he lost an engine. His mistake was he called back, and we had to get headquarters involved in it. They refused to let us take the airplane off the ground with one engine, even though we said, hey, we'll drop the tanks, we'll do anything, let's get it out of here. Because if it stays on this sandbar overnight, the VC will come and booby trap it or blow it up and we won't have it. So they refused to let us fly it out on one engine. I came up with an idea. I knew some Army people over in the Crane helicopter section. I said, hey, come over and pick this thing up and bring it back to the base. Right. Wrong. The guy came over, and what you see is that big hook up here. There's a cable. He picked it up and started moving before it was off the ground. When it started oscillating back and forth, they sheared the cable, dropped the airplane from about 100 feet. That's the results. $6 million down the drain. I got fired over this. They said the helicopter was too heavy, and that's the reason he dropped it. So we had another crane come in and pick up the wreckage now that's full of water and sand. And you can see the staff car there from headquarters. They came in a Beaver and the staff car. And this is to prove that it wasn't too heavy. The guy flew it back,